Thank you very much for having me on your podcast. So I'm Erica Stanford. I run the Crypto Curry Club, which are now the most popular networking and educational events for crypto, blockchain and emerging tech in the UK. We've got a really, really cool community of a lot of the founders and C-suite and leaders of the most exciting crypto, blockchain, fintech companies across London and the main tech hubs in the UK. And just roomfuls of great speakers all getting together a few times a month for lunches and dinners over curry and drinks when we're not in lockdown. So currently we've gone virtual. We've got a lot of virtual webinars and quizzes going on to keep the community together and get some incredible people sharing their stories and tips and advice over webinars. And we've got the Crypto Courier. So it's a newsletter that goes out every Friday, just giving all the latest updates and the main news events of that week for crypto, blockchain and payments, and some general events just summarized into a few really easy to read sentences. So it's designed that anyone can read that in about 10 minutes and get an overview of everything that's happened that week.
And how come, why did you start Crypto Curry Club? How did you become, involved with fintech? What is your past story? You immediately started from day one from traditional financial services, and then, when you saw financial technology, then developed an interest in that, or you're coming from a different industry?
No, sort of both. I studied economics at uni, so got a master's in that, but that was over 10 years ago now. And then worked in marketing and sales for some tech companies for a while. But where my interest initially in crypto came from, and my biggest interest in the space, is still the use cases of cryptocurrency for payments. I'd traveled a lot. I'd spent a year and a half traveling around Asia. I'd lived in South America for a while. I lived in Buenos Aires in Argentina during the economic crash there. I've got family in Mexico, so I spent quite a bit of time there and traveled a lot around South America. And I think those experiences really do shape you. I often cite the story. I spent 1 month, 2 months, one summer in Guatemala one summer, and I got mugged, I think, 4 times in a row. This was about 12 years ago, and it was probably a slightly less safe country, and just had no cards left, no means left of getting any money. I was sensible and only ever took 1 card out with me, but eventually they were all gone, so I had to go to the nearest Western Union, the remittance company, and call my dad, and he kindly sent me some money, but that cost 14%, and it took 3 days to arrive. And the thing is, that's, for me, it wasn't too big a disadvantage. I was there for a summer and then I could go home, and he obviously sent enough cash to just keep me going until then. But for 2.5 billion people around the world, they don't have access to banking, and they don't have cards that can be stolen. They just have no choice but to rely on those remittance companies, and they're awful companies. They charge such high rates. The average around the world is 6.9%, but there are many that charge up to 30%. And the more you do travel and the more you do see about people, a lot of the poorest people around the world have to pay the highest amounts and really do get discriminated against for payments or for microloans or for so many things. And partly that's just companies just taking advantage of them, but also if you look at fiat currency, so government currency, if you look at traditional payment methods, there are charges for every payment made, for every digital payment made, and for larger quantities they're absorbed and don't really affect anyone. But especially if you look at smaller amounts, and in the UK often shops won't take cards for less than £5, but specifically for cards for payments for less than about 50p, it's just simply not viable to make digital transactions because the costs are so high. And if you go to many countries around the world, that just rules out card payments. So then when you look at cryptocurrency and you've got a means of sending money from A to B without needing to rely on any third party, without needing to pay any transaction fees, without having to be approved or risking getting that transaction stopped by a third party that doesn't like it, I could just see the enormous potential for probably less for the UK, but more for a lot of the other countries around the world. And I just got super, super excited about that. So when I first heard about crypto, I think start of 2017, I just read everything I could and just looked a lot and investigated all the use cases, and just was super excited by it. But then the Crypto Curry Club started sorry, excuse me, I just have a drink.
Sure. Can I ask you a question in the meantime? Or, I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate for the sake of conversation, because I completely agree with what you're saying. But there's a difference, between having cryptocurrencies and then exchanging them and then acquiring cryptocurrencies. Luckily, I think it's getting better because there are more exchanges, which means, more competition, and so lower fees for the customers and more benefits overall. But I found that some exchanges still charge a fortune for
what I would add to that then is my interest in crypto is not the type of crypto that you trade on exchanges, to be honest.
It's so volatile as well. It's
so I mean, that's actually a really key point to add. That side of crypto, I'm just not interested in. There's so much politics and so much volatility and there's so much market manipulation.
Exactly.
That it's just not my space.
See, I really sorry.
No, so what really excites me is the use cases, and that might be stable currencies. Now, again, not the stable currencies that we've seen so far. I mean, you've got Tether as the main one. Do I believe that Tether is actually backed 1-to-1 by the US dollar? No, not at all. I wouldn't put anything on it. And there's yet more cases of them printing. So is there a stable currency that's out yet on the traditional crypto side that I would trust? No, not really. Some of the exchanges are now bringing out their own stable currencies. Gemini, for example, have got one.
Yeah.
And I think more and more, it's just what really excites me is the sort of decentralized currency that is stable, that isn't traded, that isn't used as just a way of trading on exchanges, but that is really just a digital token that can be transacted in micro amounts instantly without the third party. So that's a really good point to make and clarify.
So Joyce, so I have a few questions about this. First, Bitcoin, for example, I'm very, very excited about it, but from an intellectual property perspective, because I think it addresses so many issues. So before digital item, were just, you could copy and paste and basically replicate them infinitely. So they really lacked the narrative, and they were just digital item, and they lacked that feeling of a real item.
Yeah.
But now, thanks to, the blockchain, and Bitcoin advertised this, every single item has kind of a narrative, as a personality, so that allows you to get that real feeling when it comes to virtual object. And I think specifically, for example, for video games. So I agree with you. I'm not excited about Bitcoin as a unit of account. I'm still, every time we have a guest, we speak about it, because of course it's capped right now. The market cap is low enough for some billionaires to just play with the market, and just increase and decrease it. But I'm excited because of other, technological feats that it addresses and it does. And about Tether, you said, which is really interesting, I think, you said stable coins and then decentralized. So, and I'm not sure whether there is an answer to that, but I'd just like to ask a question, in case you already tackled this point, or how do you think it would be possible to implement a decentralized system which is also reliant on a stable coin? Because like, if you look at Gemini, for example, and Tether, I'm not sure, but I think that they're centralized in that there is a centralized body that is accountable to, ensure that 1-to-1, or at least on paper, 1-to-1 exchange and management. And I think when you start introducing that centralized aspect, you lose some of the benefits, that come with an impartial, decentralized system. I'm not a rebel, I'm not a cypherpunk or anything like that, but I'm just asking whether you have an idea how that could happen, let's say.
I mean, I think realistically, we've still got to have an economic system where money is in some way accounted for. Governments still want taxes, bills realistically still have to be paid in fiat currency. Anyone who rents or has a mortgage, there are some cases who have bought property with Bitcoin. They're the exception, and you read about exceptional landlords that accept it. But for 99.9% of people need fiat currency to be able to go about everyday life, to
Yeah.
pay bills, to eat, to survive. And so you've always got to have a means to cash out, and whilst you've always got to have that, and I think for governments and regulators to accept something, I can't see how that will be decentralized practically
Yeah.
yet on a scale that would make a real difference. And to be honest, I mean, slightly controversial opinion here, Facebook's Libra project, I'm not claiming that Facebook have an excellent track record with data privacy or anything. There's a lot of things about Facebook that aren't great in terms of their users' privacy. But I was so excited and hopeful that the Libra project would work,
Mm-hmm.
for a few reasons. Facebook have 2.5 billion users. They have 1.5 billion people who use their platforms, be that WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, every month. That's more users than any country, than any World Bank, than any government have around the world. And they've got the financial reserves to be able to do a lot. So where I was super excited by Libra, and I'm still hoping that they can actually make it work, something as radical as bringing about a digital currency, which isn't specifically the dollar, for example, which is currently the sort of the world currency, but a currency that can be sent in micro amounts, that you can pay people in different countries to do different tasks, where you could even have a paper content platform whereby every article you read, you pay 5p, for example, to reward that journalist. Or if you listen to a song, you pay X amount instead of having to subscribe and pay a lot of money to something where you maybe only want to read one article a month. You don't necessarily want to pay £10 a month to that newspaper, but you might be happy paying 5 or 10p, for example, for every article that you read or for every song that you listen to. So there's so many uses in micro amounts, and you talked about esports and gaming earlier, and that's one of the real big use cases of digital currency. But there's so many applications around the world where micro amounts, micro payments would be useful for content creators, for blog creators, and especially in digital rights management. There have been so many problems where, I mean, even Spotify got sued. They were taking in money from their monthly payments and just didn't know who to pay out the royalties to. They just didn't have a track record.
It's really difficult though to manage royalties.
It's phenomenally difficult, and the movie industry, music industry has really struggled currently, and are looking at blockchain to account for that. And Spotify subsequently did buy out a blockchain platform. But if you take a currency whereby you can actually divide any payment, be that for watching a movie or listening to a song, and divide that into 100 micro amounts, even if that's less than 1p, and pay out artists in live time so they can see exactly what they're getting, that's a phenomenal use case. And it's such a shift in how payments would be made, and without necessarily needing to cash out into fiat right until the end, that it would be incredible to have such an infrastructure just as a test case to see how it works, to make the point, to make people more aware of digital currency, and to get people used to such transactions. And I just think realistically, Facebook are probably the only company around the world that have got the ability to make that happen. There's a load of small startups that have incredible tech and probably better privacy and maybe better ideas, but they just simply wouldn't realistically have the money or the power or the political clout to be able to bring those about. And Facebook do. They've got the money, they've got the user base to make some real changes. So I'm still really, really hoping that the Facebook can make the Libra work. Would I want that to be the world payment system for everything forever? No, not at all. But they would be, hopefully, in theory, the ones that can make enough changes with regulation and with adoption and with just public understanding, that then once they've broken down that barrier, then other startups, other companies can bring about improvements in privacy.
To accelerate the space.
Totally.
And you know what, actually, it's funny because I wanted to ask you about Libra. I wanted to ask you, I'm very excited as well about Libra for the same exact reason, accelerate. And especially for me, the user base is one of the most challenging aspects, I think, nowadays, because so many companies are competing for user base, and and Facebook has established through Facebook, Instagram. It also targets different demographics, businesses, people. It targets everything. So it would be great. And here, like, again, I want to raise a point. How do you feel about privacy when it comes to cryptocurrency, especially if they are, they're not decentralized as Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
And is that something you're concerned with? Because, for example, everything would be trackable. Economic. We had a few guests like Joe Matonis and also on Yavin, and they all said they all agree on one point, which is you don't have economic freedom without. So you don't really have freedom without
Mm-hmm.
economic freedom. And if you
Yeah, I mean, yeah, totally. I mean, that's a big argument for
Mm.
having a decentralized version. And actually, what really scares me about the future and payments specifically, it actually terrifies me, is the thought of having a fully digitized payment future that can be controlled. And that's potentially going backwards slightly. But if you look at, say, China, for example, they've already got a currency where everything is digital, everything is done on mobile apps, and they're already blocking people from being able to book
Yeah.
trains or do anything. And then part of the goal is that they've obviously got their social credit system, and they want it to be that people who aren't conforming to that are basically prisoners in their own home and can't make any payments. And what's scary about that is it's the concept of who is good or bad or should have payments blocked
Yeah.
is very subjective. And what's stopping a country with that power to make it, well, you voted the wrong way, you spoke to the wrong person, you watched the wrong documentary, you
did something silly
support,
when you were younger, like
well,
everyone makes mistakes. Yeah.
either that, or purely as a political thing to control
Yeah.
exactly which way people vote, or what people do, or what they spend their money on. And they're already blocking payments for that, and that does very much
It's
scare
scary.
me
Yeah.
that could come. And I mean, the thing is, with cash, providing physical cash is relatively stable, that's still a means of transactions, but it's only the next step for a government or bank to block your account because you did something that they don't like.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're already seeing changes in governments here. That's only ever one step away. So yeah, that does really scare me as a centralized
and
as a centralized currency.
I think another curious point is that, as you mentioned, the dollar now is the currency of reference in the world.
Sure.
And there is a lot of, theories behind that, but basically they justify, expert justify, and you're an economist, so you probably know this much better than I do. But the prominence of the dollar comes, from what I understand, from being tied up to oil. So from the agreement that they had and being the currency of reference for the trade of oil, that brought dollar really into the prominence and, of course, the strength of the United States. What would be interesting, a few years ago, I think a couple of years ago, that article came out in The Economy saying the data was more valuable than oil.
Sure.
So if Facebook and if Libra, let's say, becomes the currency of reference for data, and that is very likely given that the consortium that makes up Libra is made up basically by the most prominent tech companies in the world, then it's very easy to see, in my opinion, how Libra could become the new dollar and could become the new currency of reference. At which point that scares me because,
because it's Facebook running that.
It's
Sure.
not because I have nothing against Facebook inherently. They're a company, and I think they're so big that, of course, every little company has things, I think does things not by the book. And I'm not saying that, that's the normality and it should be like that. Sometimes I think there are also mistakes that people don't want to make necessarily, but it happens. And, the bigger the size of the company, the more likely is that there is something, that it's very hard to manage, I believe.
Yeah.
But aside from bad practices, good practices, I do think that, a private company that already basically controlled the media, which is an enormous amount of power, and it was able to, sway election.
Political elections,
exactly.
Sure, yeah.
So if you put in their hand also the whole economy, they're basically become, an infranational body because they would be stronger than a state. And as you pointed out, with 2.5 billion users, that's a big state. And it also has, if you think about it, its own culture, because from meme to everything else, people that become adopters of social networks, that's a form of culture, I think. You see people that do not use social network and people that use social network. It's there is a form of culture that is developing online which transcend the culture of a country. So yeah, I think that would basically bring Facebook to be a state like entity.
Sure. And then what's the difference between them and the US in a way?
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
For the checks, but again, it's so difficult, like for a citizen to enforce these rights. But going back to the events, because that's
Mm-hmm.
actually something that is very um, specific to you.
Yes.
How did you go about starting, Crypto Curry Club? How did it happen? Like, I'm really curious. First of all, I love the name. So how did you come up? I'm sure
Everyone
everyone
loves the
asks you.
name.
Yeah,
Everyone
exactly.
loves the name. And everyone asks if there's real curry there. And of course, yes, absolutely. That's the focal element. I started the events. I'd been, by this point, working in the space for a while, just been super interested in the whole ecosystem. But it was pretty much based at a laptop. And then I wanted to meet more people, wanted to find out what other people were going were working on, what they were up to. So I spent about 3 months one summer just going to every event. This was in 2018, every event in London, just to try and meet more people, find out what was happening. And so this was summer 2018, so after the whole crash. But it was just shocking how how bad a lot of the events were. You've got some really, really good ones in London. I mean, London's apparently the second biggest ecosystem in the world for blockchain and tech after Silicon Valley. So it's an incredible city with a lot of incredible people, and there's a lot of really good, practical but very technical events going. I'm not a techie. I'm not interested in code. It's not my space. I was interested in the use cases and what people were doing, and there were just so many events that were basically run by used car salesmen charging speakers to pitch at the audiences. So you're just sat there listening to sales pitches, and then they say go network, and unless you're potentially super outgoing, it's hard to know who to talk to, or to get valuable conversations from that, or just to approach total strangers. So I didn't find that particularly fun. And you still had, it was just so much of the sort of the crypto ICO boom left
Yeah,
over,
that's
that
what I was about to say.
in every room there are just a bunch of people trying to sell the latest scam, or trying to get you to invest in whatever, things that were clearly scams, or clearly, if not scams, just stuff that I'm just not interested in being around. So I just thought, I'd been previously to it was a property developer's Christmas curry dinner, because it's England, so everything that's worth doing is celebrated over a curry. So it was a Christmas curry dinner, and it was just the best networking event I'd ever been to. You're sat around a table sharing food together, sharing curry together, and it just made it really easy to talk to everyone, and everyone there was there for a reason. And I just thought, okay, this is clearly needed for blockchain. Crypto curry, logical name. And so I think the domain crypto curry was gone already. Someone had beaten me to it, but Crypto Curry Club was available. And it was just a totally impulsive thing. I called an Indian friend who's a total foodie, like me, and I knew he'd know somewhere to go. So he put me on the phone just that same evening to another friend of his who owned a very good Indian restaurant in Mayfair.
Well, in Mayfair, you went all
Mayfair.
out.
Sure. So and it was a new restaurant, and because it was a referral, I just booked it out then and there over the phone for just a random day in advance, I think 3 weeks or so later, and just invited some people that I knew who were senior in the space, and invited some other people that looked interesting from LinkedIn. And I just initially, I thought it would be just a good way to get some of the key people in the space together, so not the type of people trying to sell scams, but really founders of the projects, and the people sort of driving the way in tech and innovation in some of the larger companies. And 25 people came for the first one. It started at 1 o'clock, and by 9 o'clock in the evening, a lot of them were still there in the pub, still talking, still networking.
Pissed drunk.
And well, no, just enjoying being in that room. And food makes everything so much more fun. It was really good food, lots of really good food. And we went for some drinks after, and it was just a real high to be in a room of so many great people, all interested in the same space. And so I just kept on doing them every month. Within a few months, we had all pretty much the heads of blockchain or heads of tech from some of the biggest global companies there, as well as founders of a lot of the most exciting startups, and the tickets were selling out within a day, just filling out this restaurant. So it just got more and more popular, just based entirely on word of mouth. And then I think after a certain time, I thought, okay, there's probably worth dedicating some time to this and to doing it properly.
And the ticket, like, I'm asking because actually I'm curious, and later I'm going to ask you maybe, if you have some tips for anyone that would like to start the franchising of events? Because I see the same exact thing happening in esports.
Well, don't do it during lockdown.
No, exactly. But I see the same happening during, this lockdown with respect to esports. Now there is sort of a bubble, and on LinkedIn, for example, there are esports experts popping up left and right. The industry is very inflated because a lot of people, I guess, as it happens, it was the case for crypto when Bitcoin surged, they want to make quick gains. So they're not there for, I'm no one to say what the right reasons are. Everyone has its own reasons. But I think there are people which are passionate about, and try to envision what the future could be like with that technology or with that specific area. And there are others that just want to make a quick game. Fair enough for a game, but I understand how that can kill, the enthusiasm coming into an industry. How, for example, your ticket, right? When you said at the beginning, they sold out before you made a Crypto Career Club, your main focus work-wise. What would it cover? Would it cover, for example, the dinner and just the cost of going out? Or
initially it wasn't a very good, probably for the first year. It was not a business model. The first probably 6 months, I was just losing money on them. I charged whatever the restaurant said as the price of a 3-course meal. And then ended up paying for drinks and stuff for people just to keep it going. And then eventually I made the price a bit higher and started giving out more free tickets to speakers and the press and to, people for whatever reason who might, do us a favor. We've had a few people give us various sort of media mentions, so that's been very kind of them. That's been covering that. And now recently there's a bit of a margin on the tickets, and we've had a few companies reach out to us about sponsoring the events, which has been great. So ticket sales are not, at least in my experience, a way to make any money whatsoever. And it didn't start about that.
It wasn't
it didn't start about that at all. And I think why it became successful is that it wasn't a business. It was just designed to be fun and designed to get people together. And had I treated it like a business at the start and been ruthless, then I don't think it would have gotten as popular.
And that's why I was asking, because I think it's also, if you're passionate about something, it's really hard to think about monetizing it. I'm not sure, at least that happened to us with, for example, Blockchain Rock with the podcast.
Sure.
We have costs. We had the microphones, the cameras and all of that. But right now we're just covering everything alone. We went to event, we covered, but it's really hard to charge. In my opinion, it's really, probably you become a bit more comfortable with it as it becomes, bigger and as a sponsor contact you. But at the beginning, you don't
I still find it really hard. I still find it really hard.
I think it's a difficult,
and now we've just been lucky that companies, there's a lot of companies have come and gained lots of value from it. And a lot of companies have hired people, gotten jobs from them, or made investments into companies they've met there, or gained, millions in investment, or formed partnerships, which are, I know many of them are in the millions and tens of millions in terms of working partnerships or sponsorship deals or whatever. So there's a lot of companies have really benefited from the events, and we've got the most incredibly loyal community who either benefit just from meeting people or learning people or building business relationships from the events. So everything has been thankfully inbound in terms of companies wanting to come to the events or asking if they can partner in some ways, and even having Brewdog reached out and if they could supply us beer to the events, which has been fantastic. And
they're a really cool brand. I really like
it's super cool, and everyone loves the beer, and I think people come as much for the beer as the curry as everything else.
They're amazing at marketing. I remember watching the last episode of Game of Thrones, and that advert came out of Brewdog with just like a metal song in the back and the can. I thought it was brilliant.
I can't say I've ever seen an episode of Game of Thrones. There's a few people trying.
Oh wow! Okay. Well, thanks, Erica. It was great. You don't really want to be that person 10 years from now. Children are going to look up to you. They're going to be like, "Oh, you were there when Game of Thrones. You watched Game of Thrones."
I had a conversation with a friend, Dan Janus, who I'll send this to afterwards because he'll laugh. Who watched all, I think, 81 episodes of it, and over a walk tried to tell me the entire story of Game of Thrones thing. And I was like, eventually I was like, okay, fine, I'll watch an episode. I maybe did this. He was like, there's 81 of them. I was like, no, not worth it.
It is. I can guarantee for your friend. But so if you had like some tips to give, right? And I guess that, from the chat we've just had, one of the main tips would be keep it genuine, keep it as, as genuine as possible. But what
For
tip
running
would you give?
events?
Yes, for creating, because I don't think it's just running event. What you're doing is
Mm.
like effectively you created a community. And I guess that,
Yeah.
again, if I'm wrong, please, correct me. But I think that, the purpose of it is to bring together people that enjoy the same industry.
Yeah.
Can also be educational, like for educational purposes. I guess it's a bit of a mix. It's about creating a community and furthering each other. No.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, definitely one of the mistakes I see just being made all the time. And again, I guess people find it easier to charge speakers than charge attendees. Don't charge speakers. You see it all the time. It makes the speakers boring. You get awfully boring people just speaking at people. People know when they're being sold to, and they send messages out saying about wanting speakers to pay for their events, and nobody trusts them, and it makes the events boring. I would definitely say don't do that. Really just focus on, if you're going to get speakers, or even if you're going to get attendees, just focus on getting the people that are the most interesting, which might not even be the people who've got the best job titles. Often people with the best job titles might be really bad public speakers, but the people who are have the most energy and the most value to give, and can speak in a passionate and exciting way. And one of the main things I spend time doing is just really curating the groups that come to them. And for a long time in London, they're invite only, and still most of them are. And that just means you've got a room full of really, really good people. And I think a lot of people make the mistake of just letting maybe anyone in, or just maybe even if there are people that maybe have been behind scams, for example, not looking out for that, especially in the space. So I think that's been really key. And we're now looking at, when lockdown ends, launching events that are big and free and open to everyone as well.
But it's going to be a different type of event, correct?
Of course, yeah.
And
so I'd say just really focus on who you're getting in. If you're getting people in to speak, just focus on how exciting are they, what value can they give, what value can they add. Food helps. If you go to an event and you can't sit down and eat food.
No, I agree. And what about how do you manage that at the beginning? How do you manage?
How do we manage the food? We go to the restaurant.
No, not the food. No. How do you manage the selection of people? What platform were you using at the beginning?
So straight at the beginning, the first one, it was just people that either I already knew, and I went through LinkedIn, and whatever I typed in, I just went through my LinkedIn and just found the people that I thought looked the most interesting, and just invited a bunch of them, and surprisingly, quite a few of them came. And since then it's just all been word of mouth, and just the most incredible people reaching out on a daily basis about asking about the curries. Even during lockdown, people are asking about how they can come or how they can attend. And so it's just all been word of mouth ever since.
So actually you touched upon that already in a way, but I wanted to ask also, what's next for Crypto Carry Club? Where do you see the future in medium to long term?
Sure. I think for the carriers, the plan is and was to make them into the biggest networking events in the UK for tech, and they already are that in some niches in crypto and blockchain. We've started events in other niches about tech for sustainability, which is super exciting. We've got some about AI, for example. So it would be nice to go into some other aspects. And even though, for example, they're not areas I'm directly working in, I love learning about them. You learn so much from the speakers and the people, and just, constantly at every event, just you're in a room full of the most incredible people in London, and many of whom often fly in for the event. So it's just incredible to be in those rooms. So I probably get the most benefit from them, just because everyone sort of comes and introduces themselves. So that's really exciting. So to grow those, but obviously we had lockdown thrust on us pretty quickly and pretty suddenly. So I escaped to a house in the countryside without even having a chance to go to the office and pick up a load of things. I think initially we thought we'd be here for a few days, and then max 2 weeks, and now a few months later. So that's been a quick way to adapt. And like you, I bought some really good microphones just before coronavirus to start a podcast, and been offered a studio in London, and of course they're left in the office, so I can't do anything. We can't access those. So there's been a lot of last minute digitization, which has been great. We've started a webinar series which are super popular. We've had some incredible speakers on, get really good attendee numbers for that. We've started a virtual quiz, so every week now we've got the Crypto Curry quiz, which I think the first one was about crypto, and then it's gone to gin and music and history and general knowledge and sports, and just it's just a lot of fun. And we've got some really good prizes for the free winners for those. So it's just a way of keeping the community
alive. And I think the fintech community is great. I think it's so open and welcoming to an extent. There are some community are not like that, but I was surprised because I'm not from financial services traditional, or I just got into it working my current place of work.
It's an amazing space to be in, and what I really love about it, I mean, the people that you're surrounded by are so intelligent and so aware of everything that's going on. But what is super exciting is a lot of the people that are working in these in for example in crypto or blockchain startups, they don't need to be working. They've already made enough money in other aspects of their life. They don't need to be doing anything. Or they're people who have had C-suite positions in the largest banks around the world, or headed up large companies, or chairman of some of the biggest enterprises around the world. They don't need to be doing any of this, and they're working for or founding in or being part of these startups that they're not really making any money at this stage, but they know that the tech is just evolving so much faster than it could in a large company. And you've just got a lot of the most incredibly intelligent people in the world leaving, good jobs, senior jobs to work in these startups. And the pace at which the technology is evolving at the moment is incredible. And you've just got these just incredibly bright minds just working on these solutions. And if you just go for coffee with these people and just talk about what they're doing, it's phenomenal. It's mind-blowing how fast things are changing. So that is really exciting, just because everybody that's there is there voluntarily.
And to be fair with you, that's actually why we started the podcast, like this video podcast, because it just gave us the ability to speak with these incredible people and learn from them. And that's actually amazing. A lot of our clients, fit exactly in the description you said. They made enough money to be very comfortable for the rest of their lives, but they want to be part of this movement. They want to promote it. And to be fair with you, I do understand that. If I had all of the money of the world, I would still want to feel alive and feel driven and passionate about something. So I think that's more of a human trait, maybe. But I don't know.
I think after lockdown, I'd just go hiking in the Himalayas for a few and then maybe think about it.
I'd say that we're pretty much. I have no more questions, but if you'd like to add something, please do.
No, I'm incredibly grateful to you for having me on. Everyone can hopefully subscribe to the Crypto Carrier and maybe join some of our virtual events and the quiz. They're all totally free to join.
I will for sure. I mean,
that'd be great.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, if you, I'll put the link in the description of the video. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for coming, Erica. It was
a
very interesting
chat.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it. The first part relating more to cryptocurrency, more technical. The second part about the event. Thanks a lot. It was
Thank you so much for having me, and hopefully see some people at a real life Crypto Curry again soon.
Hopefully.
Thanks.
See you soon.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.